Hello and welcome to the Gifted Podcast. I am your host, Niraj Mulani, and in the Gifted Podcast, I speak with elite athletes as we try to challenge the misconception that athletes are just some people who are talented or gifted with special abilities at birth. Every week, I am joined by an elite athlete as we try to break down what it truly takes and means to be an athlete. If you're an aspiring athlete or just a casual sports fan, you will definitely enjoy this podcast as I get candid with athletes about their journey, their achievements, moments of heartbreak, and most importantly, moments of hard work and perseverance. Guys, I'm happy to share that the Gifted podcast is now sponsored by Zenkai Sports, the new disruptor in the performance apparel world. And they have come up with a great offer for the listeners of this podcast. So, stick around till the end and find out about this exciting offer. In today's episode, I have with me United States Winter Olympian Rebekah Bradford. Rebekah is a speed skater who competed at the 2010 Vancouver Games in the 1000 meters distance. Rebekah and I discuss her qualification to the Olympics, the skate that is a folklore in the US speed skating circuit. Rebekah also reflects on how she accidentally found her faith that she believes has allowed her to perform better as an athlete and fulfill her dream of becoming an Olympian, the dream that she had had since she was 5 years old. So let's jump right in. Welcome to the Gifted Podcast, Rebekah. We're really excited to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All great, all great. And thank you so much for taking out the time today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
There's a lot to know about you as an individual as well as an athlete. So let's start with your journey to the Olympics. And I know that this journey to the Olympics is sort of a folklore in the US speed skating circuit. Tell me about that Olympic trial skate and the reskate.
Okay, so the way how I made the Olympic team was unique, and I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to make the Olympic team from a reskate. It gave me so much more confidence from that moment in my life. And let me explain. When you're getting ready for the Olympics, you have World Cup races, and it defines how many eligible spots there are for an Olympic team. And for me, I had to win the race because I didn't pre-qualify leading up like some of my other teammates did. And so there was a lot of pressure to have the fastest time. And I was on that time, but then 50 feet before the finish line, I fell. And I fell kicking and screaming over the finish line. And I came in second. I was, you're trying everything you can do to trigger off that time with your skate, because that's the rules of the game. And I crossed the line, pounding my fist in the ice, saying, "My life is over. I can't believe I'm not making the team." And I, ripped my skin suit. It was just so embarrassing. And in the sport of US speed skating, you get the opportunity to do a reskate for team selection. And I remember looking in the stands and seeing my 3-year-old nephew and wanting to set an example to just always stand up after you fall. So I accepted the reskate, and not that I thought anything would happen of it. It's just I just wanted to really finish my career on my feet. And 29 minutes later, I'm in a new skin suit that's not stretched out. My equipment, who knows how my equipment is, and the ice is it's still wet from the resurface, so it's not as fast as it was when I was competing. And all those variables, it didn't matter to me because I just wanted to be on my feet for my friends and family and for my nephew. That gun went off. I just focused on breathing and pushing to the side. And I didn't even know how fast I was going. My coaches came up on the ice with me just to cheer me on. Normally you get a lap board to show how fast you're going. My coaches didn't have that. They were just cheering me on. And I didn't know how fast I was going until, I come around the last backstretch and I could see my coach getting really excited. And I was like, I'm just going to finish the race. I don't care what's going on. And not only did I skate a personal best and became US sprint champion, but I made the Olympic team. And it was just such a precious moment. I had this photo that was captured just, when I realized what happened, and then just the amount of support from the ice rink of just people who got to share that moment. A really defining moment in my life. It's just, when I look back at it, it just really has given me so much confidence to work through other struggles and things that we handle with life.
And you told me that you only had half an hour before your reskate was to begin. And having all these variables that may not have been in your favor. So this ice may not have been that fast, or your swimsuit wasn't stretched into. In spite of all these things that could come up against you, how are you trying to center yourself, and what sort of conversations were you having with yourself before the reskate was to happen?
I think my emotions were blank, but I do rely a lot on my faith. I know that one of the verses that popped in my head was that, a man falls 7 times, but a righteous man stands 8. And then another one that popped in my head was that my times are in thy hands. So I just, there's moments like when you just can't operate on your own, and there's like I don't want to say supernatural, but I feel like I was spirit led in that moment. I know when I was in my race and I was just focusing on my breathing, there was, there's 5 turns in 1,000-meter. And on my 4th turn, I normally get tired and my technique fails. And what that happens is your shoulders, for me, would twist in, and you're not going square into the turn, so you can get the most efficient push into the ice. I just remember hearing this word, no, like, don't turn in your shoulders. And I was able to hold my technique for the last lap. And that's what really carried me through to get that time. And that wasn't the voice in my head, because normally I'm like thinking about how, I'm just so tired, or I don't know if I could do this. And I know a lot of people battle with those thoughts when you're in the moment. I wish I could, say that I don't struggle with that, being an athlete at my level, but I know a lot of other athletes struggle with that. But I just, that moment of just going, like, kind of being in that moment and obeying that, that voice, I'm so glad I did that.
And I know that you are very spiritual and have a very strong faith. Do you think that reskate was almost like a divine intervention for you?
That is a great question. I never really thought of it that way, but I do know, looking back at it, my career didn't go the way I wanted to after the Olympics. They say the only way to prepare for an Olympics is an Olympic. So I've always tried to go back. But I will tell you that having that experience in Vancouver, it's just so precious to me. And it's a journey that still continues, because I compete in the Olympics. At that particular games, I was able to meet my husband, who purchased me at a celebrity date auction because he was a fan on my Facebook, and he was following me during the games. I've had the opportunity to get 2 scholarships to pursue master's degrees. And then to be able to be on a platform to share, I had something called a bilateral pulmonary embolism when I was training for my 2014 Olympics. And I almost lost my life from that. But I think because I competed in Vancouver and I had that platform to speak from, that I was able to be an advocate for the patient's voice, for hopefully other people don't have that experience. And what I mean by that is I was looking like a healthy person and healthy athlete, and I was misdiagnosed for 6 months because I didn't look the part of not being well. And so I was able to do some advocacy work of people to really listen to the voice, to to the person instead of what they see, because that can be deceiving as well.
And I know that you have had the dream of being an Olympian since you were 5 years old. How did that dream come about, and what particularly about speed skating really resonated with you at that age and beyond?
Well, there was a couple of things that happened when I was 5, and I'm going to age myself. So I was 5 in 1988. And around that time, my brother came home with a flyer with learn how to speed skate from his middle school. And my parents thought that would be a great family sport because my mom's side of the family did speed skating. We're from Minnesota, so we would wait for the lakes to freeze over and just strap on our skates and go. So that was a lot of fun. But then also the Calgary Olympics was being televised, and I watched Bonnie Blair win her medals. And so that was just so inspiring. And, to have a 5-year-old say, I'm going to make the Olympic team, I don't know who's to say, but it's just, it does feel great to be able to achieve that and to have that for myself and then for my family.
Yeah. And now that you had achieved your goal to be at the Olympics and qualified for it, how did you prepare yourself physically and mentally going into the Olympics?
I don't think, that the goal is to always be intentional with what you're doing. So it's not like you do anything special to get ready for the Olympics. You just are more intentional with what you need to do. It's when you're at a high level like that, it's a lifestyle. You're thinking about what kind of nutrition you're putting into your body, how you're resting up, what kind of training you need to get out of the day. Showing up is one thing, but to get your specific goals out of the day is really what's going to set you apart. So for me, for my Olympic trial race, I talked about not twisting in my shoulders in the turn. So it was a lot about turn setups and just relaxing and, making sure that my head is clear leading up to that race.
Right. And did you ever think that you'd want to recreate the zone that you were in for the reskate?
I think that, after the Olympics in 2010, I had a really great competition season. It was probably one of the best competition seasons I had because I learned a lot from that reskate. Just knowing that we're stronger than what we think. We're capable of more than what we give ourselves credit to. And just, if you're focusing more on the process instead of the result, you might do better than what you were intending to do. But then that's when I started having my injuries until the remainder of my career.
Right. And I know that I think you relied heavily on your faith to get you through these injuries as well. And what I'm particularly interested in knowing is, how do you think your faith helped you improve as an athlete, especially going into the Olympics as well?
I think that the way how you can have a calm mind is if you look at what your day is and you say, this is my plan A, but then, plan A never happens. You always have plan B, plan C, plan D, and you have to continually learn how to adapt and go, this is what God's best is for me in this moment. And then just to know what the next right thing to do is. Otherwise, I think that if you get caught up with things not going the way how we want it, there's going to be event delays. There's going to be, something's not going to go according to plan. How are you going to cope with that? Because the next person might be coping better than you are, and it's going to come out in the race.
Right. And now, having made it to the Olympics, tell me about your experience at the Olympics. How do you think you fared, and how did you rate your own performance there?
I am very happy with the way how I competed at the Olympics. I think one thing that was distracting to me was when we competed internationally, we would have a few US fans. in the stands because speed skating isn't the most popular sport in the US. But then the Vancouver Olympics was kind of a hometown Olympics, so there's a lot of USA fans in the stands, and it was so overwhelming to have that support. And I was the first pair to kick off the competition. And so I wasn't expecting to see, all that red, white, and blue in the stands. And that was a very, that was a very fun moment in my life. And then the 1,000 meter, I placed 29th, and from first to 29th was a 2.2 second difference. So it was a very tight field for that. And so I feel like I, competed the best that I could. And that's, that's all we can ask for.
Right. And, going back to the moment when you were 5 and had this dream to be at the Olympics, do you think the moment lived up to it, especially now that you'd made it there?
I think that's that's the curse of someone who just wants to achieve all the time, that there's always a little tiny voice in their head that there needs to be more, right? So it's like you achieve something, but then I want to move on to the next thing. And so my husband asked that a lot about me too. He's like, did you enjoy that moment? Because you deserve it, and you should just embrace that moment. And it's one of those balancing acts that I think that people who have that characteristic, I think they know what I'm talking about, where there's just that little tinge in the back of your mind that goes, there could have been more. But yes, there's nothing that could take away from saying that you were able to achieve something that you set out to do when you're 5.
Absolutely. And I think that is almost like divine alignment of goals, because you know what you want to be at 5 and not many people do. And then being able to deliver on that as well, because it's one thing a 5-year saying that they want to be an Olympian, but then being able to deliver on that is something really, really great.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate and blessed that I had my family that was able to support and bring me along with that. That was many long weekends for competitions that my parents would, we would drive cross country to go compete, and there's no way that I wouldn't have been able to achieve that without them.
And I know that there is some background of speed skating in the family as well. Do you think that was ever a helping factor as well in your road to the Olympics?
I think that, I have family history in the sport, and just to have that, yes, it's, I have my family, and then I have my skating family, and then I have my church family. And so to have that that support in skating, it's, you get to know the volunteers, you get to know, I have many coaches throughout the year, I have many teammates throughout the years. Just to have that, like, every person has helped me get one step closer to where I wanted to be.
And I know that you also started competing at a very early age, like when you were 13.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that was an advantage for you or a disadvantage for you, having specialized in the sport that early?
Yeah, so from when I was 5 to 13, I did figure skating and speed skating. And then when I was 13, I was gifted the gift of height, and I became 5'11" overnight. And so I was very tall, and I couldn't hold my rotations in the air anymore. And then they also, for the 1998 Olympic trials, they did not have age restrictions. So I made my first Olympic trial race when I was 13. Not that I was anywhere close to making the team, but that was a deciding moment in my life to go, I'm going somewhere in speed skating versus figure skating. And so I made the big decision to quit figure skating to pursue speed skating. And I think, having that moment and competing really helped me solidify where I wanted to go. It was kind of validation that it wasn't just all in my head that I might actually have a shot at making it, but to have that opportunity to do that at such a young age, there was not many people who were able to make that time standard.
Absolutely. And how easy do you think the transition was from figure skating to speed skating for you?
I think that it was probably a better transition when I gave up figure skating because the push is different. And so my speed skating coach can tell when I figure skated because it would just throw off my technique. So I think the moment that I was able to put those skates up and just focus solely on speed skating, I was able to really hone in on my skating position.
Right. And now coming back to the Olympics, I know that, once the Olympics was over, you had a really good purple patch where you were delivering really good results. But then you had to also deal with the injuries post the Olympics. I was keen to know what kept you going through that rehab, and then what sort of goals were you setting beyond the 2010 Olympics? Because I know the dream was to be an Olympian. Now that you had achieved that, like you mentioned, the goal is to obviously get more there.
Mm-hmm.
So, what sort of goals were you setting for yourself post the 2010 Olympics?
I think that I definitely wanted to bring back some hardware for the 2014 games. But that road from 2010 to 2014 I had a lot of things going on. I mentioned that I met my now husband through a celebrity date auction. And so I was in that relationship and figuring out those things. I've also had to have double knee surgery. And so I had knee surgery done on both knees at the same time, which meant I was peg legging around and finishing up my bachelor degree in psychology. And I, got back on my feet from all that, got married, but then I had that bilateral pulmonary embolism where I probably would have died if I wasn't so healthy, being an athlete. And what pulmonary embolism is, it's blood clots in your lungs. And so I had a partial infarct on my right side of my lung, which meant I had tissue death. And I also had some blood clots that burst and bled around my lung, which puts friction alongside your rib cage when you're breathing. So it's like sandpaper. And so that was a really long, difficult road. So when I was in the ER from that to Olympic trials, it was 13 months. And to heal from the blood clots, it's about 2 full years to feel normal. So when I finally found myself on the line for the Olympic trial race, I was, competing against world champions. We have a very strong US team, and I missed the team by a tenth. And I think, you look at moments sometimes and you go, I wish I would have done that. I wish I wouldn't have done that. And, 3 days after that race I had for the 1,000-meter, I woke up in the dead of the night. I was like, I stood up before my race. I can't believe I did that. And, it was the first time NBC was airing our Olympic trials. And I went back and reviewed my race. And I was like, sure enough, I've, stood up before the line. And if I would have kicked my long leg over the finish line, who knows? Maybe that would have been the 10th, maybe not. I don't know. But, the girls that fought to the end, they deserve that Olympic team. I'm very happy, and they did an honorable job competing. So we had a great team for 2014, but that was a difficult moment to work through and to battle through and wrestle. And again, I think maybe I was right where I was supposed to be. I don't think the making a second team was definitely not my plan. Or making a second team was my plan, but I don't think it was ultimately the ultimate plan there.
And it's very refreshing to see that, even in such a difficult time, the perspective that you are able to hold because of the faith and all the work that you put into your work as well. And I was keen to understand, especially like you mentioned, the mind would keep trying, would always try to think of things that it could have done differently to probably have reduced the time by 0.1 second, which could have meant that you would have qualified. How do you try to break out of that loop where you're constantly trying to think of the things that you could have done better? Because we know that it obviously keeps you in a sinkhole where you're not able to get out of it and then focus on improving as an athlete.
Yeah, I think that when you're in those moments of, you know, I don't want to say the word failure, but you take those moments and you go, what, how could I learn from this and how can I move on from it? And then you just, even with my faith, it's like I know that God has plans for a future and to prosper and to use it. Um, and then having that faith in it, it doesn't mean that every day is going to be fairy tales and smiles. It just means that you're going to have a couple of rough days and you just got to figure out how to work through it.
And I had read this somewhere that you also found your faith serendipitously. And now that, in our conversation, I've seen it pop up a few times. So I know that it is a very strong anchor that allows you to not be just a better athlete, but a better human being. How do you think that panned out for you, just finding your faith after moving to Utah?
Yes. So I grew up in a Christian home, but when I moved out to Salt Lake City, I walked away from my faith and I found myself in an abusive relationship. And one of the things that this person told me that got me out of the relationship is that he called me a Christian. And that was the worst insult someone could call me at my life at that time. And then 3 months later, I found myself at church and getting baptized because I'm sure the sermon was about finance, but for whatever reason, I felt so convicted. I was like, everything that I learned as a child is true, and I've been part of the Rock Church ever since, out in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I think that, God has come through my life in so many big ways, in so many pivotal moments. And it's just, I even think about like when I met my husband for this charity event. I didn't believe in love at first sight. He walked through the doors and it's like I heard this voice, he's the one. I was like, what? So how am I supposed to get this guy to pursue me now if I fell in love with him at first sight? So that was some creative thinking there.
Right. And I think this also goes back to the time that you just decided that you want to be an Olympian at age of 5. And we see this happen a lot of times with you, where there's almost this alignment of the goals, and something that's right for you comes to you as an intervention and an epiphany.
I think that I don't get those moments every single day, but when I do, they come through in really big moments. And you just have to listen to that and follow. I think that's, you always hope to hear those. You pray for them every day, and then when you do, you have to say, okay, I'm here.
Right. And now, having missed out on the Olympics for 2014, like you mentioned, it may not have been the divine plan for you that was meant for you at that time. What were you then planning for the next few years after missing out on those trials?
Yeah, so I went to work full time and I still had knee pain after those knee surgeries. So I had more aggressive knee surgery and took the time to really heal from that and started going back to the gym and lifting more than I've ever had before in my life. And so I had this thought in my head, well, why not make another comeback for 2018? And so I talked to, one of the coaches and got onto a development team because I missed out on qualifying season. So you can either train on a development team and then hope to get on the national team. And so I was on the development team and started skating personal best and made a World Cup team. So I was very excited for 2018 and hoping that could be my second Olympics. But then I injured my back going into that Olympic year. And so I skated with a disc that broke off and was calcifying on my nerve, and I needed surgery to correct that, but I didn't want to miss out competing. So we got the surgery after the Olympic trials, but I still competed well. I placed 6th at the 2018 Olympics, and you had to be in the top 3. So I was happy to be able to finish my career that way and hang up my hat. And then after the 2018 Games, that's when I had the opportunity to get a scholarship to get 2 master's degrees. So I was very happy that that journey continued, because that was through the Team USA scholarship.
Right. And now that you have transitioned into corporate world, I wanted to understand from you, how easy was the transition for you? Because we know that a lot of athletes struggle with that. And particularly considering the fact that you specialized in your sport early on in your life and then were able to get into the corporate world much sooner compared to a lot of other athletes.
Mm-hmm. I think that, you have to strip away the sport and go, I just really like to work out. I like to go to a gym and suffer in community. And I got plugged into, I started doing CrossFit at CrossFit Hilo out here in West Jordan, Utah. And I love it. I mean, I can't do most of the movements, and I'm accepted there anyway, which I enjoy. And so that's new. You have to put your ego at the door and just try something new and see what else is out there in life, and then just go, what's the bare bones as an athlete? Well, I still like to get up and go hit the gym. I still like to connect with my friends and family. And what did I like about sport? Well, I like that technology started coming into the sport and really getting the voice out there. So I'm pursuing, marketing opportunities in the tech industry. I love it. So it's just, you just keep expanding from there. I don't think you ever want to stop and say I accomplished what I set out to do, because there's still so much more in life to pursue.
Absolutely, absolutely, totally agreed. And well, it's been a real pleasure having you today, Rebecca, and knowing your journey to the Olympics and how there were a lot of factors, but obviously faith was one of the important factors that assisted you all along the way. So it's really refreshing to know how a lot of athletes, especially you, are relying on that to improve you as an athlete as well as an individual altogether. So thank you so much for taking out the time today and sharing your story with us.
Anytime.
Well, Rebecca is one tenacious competitor, and her take on how her faith helped her become a better athlete was very refreshing to hear. Just 6 months out of the emergency room, and she missed qualifying for the 2014 Olympics by merely zero point 0.1 seconds, is a testament to the athlete that Rebecca is. As promised, here's more about our partnership with Zenkai Sports, the new disruptor in the performance apparel world. Zenkai utilizes a brand new technology that repels liquids, keeping you cooler during intense activity as the sweat evaporates naturally off your skin. This allows you to regulate body temperature easily and push yourself harder, as Zenkai clothing harnesses the power of your sweat. Sweat is our friend, keep it on you. Zenkai Sports is also the only performance apparel company which is cotton based. All of their gear is over 65% cotton, with some pieces over 95%. Cotton is biodegradable, feels great against your skin, and is much better for our environment than synthetic based apparel. Please go to www.zenkaisports.com to check out their cool range of products that can give you that extra boost in your performance. And while you are at it, use the code TGP20 for a 20% discount off your entire order. You can also find all these details in our show notes of this episode, so don't forget to check it out. So that's it for this episode, folks. Thank you for tuning into the Gifted Podcast. I have been your host, Niraj Mulani. A gentle reminder, you can find us as The Gifted on your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and Google. Keep following us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as The Gifted Podcast and on Twitter as The Gifted Pod so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you next week with another special episode. Until then, stay well and keep your masks on.